Hi, everybody. I love when I have a really big smile on my face and then suddenly I realize I'm muted. Hi, everybody, and welcome. We are on week 4 of our serial content boot camp. And I will tell you that it was a little bit nerve-wracking publishing my first episode. I published myself last week on Kindle Vella. The story is called Hex My Ex. I'm trying to use all of the different principles that we're all discussing together here, including using the PALM criteria, including how to figure out arranging my time so that I can publish on a schedule, etc., etc. So this week, we're going to explore an age-old question for writers. To pants or to plot? If you've already written a book before, which many of you in the audience have, then you know which one you are, or at least which one you wish you were. I know that I am firmly a plotter. And I think that's because I'm a little scared to fly by the seat of my pants. So, which one is best for writing serial fiction? We know that it's a unique format. Should you continue on your plotting journey? Should you continue on your pantsing journey? Is there anything that might get in the way? I've got a solution for you. It involves a brand new word, which all of us writers always love. If only we could make up our own words all the time. So let's start digging in. All right, so this is what we've covered so far. First week, we talked about choosing the best content and using the PALM criteria. Week 2 was about developing a writing habit, making sure that you can publish your episodes on a regular basis that your readers can expect. Last week, we talked about your first 3 installments. Now, installments and episodes, I use the words interchangeably. Your first 3 episodes are some of the most important that can hook your reader because they are available for free for everyone to read on Kindle Vella. Nobody ever has to make a coin investment on your first 3 episodes. So that's your chance to really reel in your reader and hook them. This week, we're talking about to outline or not to outline. And hold on one second. Just let me get my other thing pulled up here. And of course, we're going to talk about plotters versus pantsers, as I mentioned before. So, you're firmly a plotter. You've got the plan, your plot outline. If you're a nonfiction author, you know everything that you would like to read and to do and everything that makes sense. So there are some pros and there are some cons to each one, no matter what you consider yourself. For planning, the pros: write and publish episodes on your own schedule with serial fiction. So you know what to expect and you can create a schedule that works for you. Also, you can define character arcs and themes, etc. Really make sure that your serial is cohesive for your readers. Some of the planning cons are you have to spend much more time upfront to get your serial ready to go. And sometimes it can constrain creativity if you are stuck with a very rigid type of plan or plot outline for your book. And if you're a pantser, some of the pros of that are, hey, you can jump right in. We're talking instant gratification that's responsive to reader feedback. Some of the cons: you need more time each week because you're not doing a lot of planning in advance. You're going to need to, because you're not planning in advance, you're really going to need to be sure that you've got what you need. Sorry about that. Just having a moment of computer crisis. You all know how it goes. All right. Also, if you find yourself as a pantser a little bit unrestrained, it can mean that your story can meander and that your readers might end up losing interest because they don't quite know where it's going. The connections that they're looking for in themes, in style, they're not quite there. So, what do we do? we're going to meet in the middle. We're going to combine the best pros of planning with the best pros of pantsing. And we're going to call it plantsing. Does that work? Or should have been, I don't know, planting was my very best guess. If you have a better option, please put it in the chat. So for planting, what are we going to plan versus what are we going to pants? Because we're going to do a little bit of both. Now, I'm going to be talking about fiction and nonfiction for both of these different attributes of planting. So let's talk about what to plan. All right, so when you are putting on your planner hat, you want to be able to plan for a consistency of style, plan for the length of your episodes, and plan for the pacing of major reveals, conflict, and resolution. Let's talk a little bit more about planning the consistency of style. So you know that style is the way an author uses words. We're talking about word choice, sentence structure, figurative language, sentence arrangement, etc. You are probably well aware of some elements of your own style, the way that you prefer to write. Or if you write across different genres, then you may have a number of different styles that you use depending on those genre expectations. So, in order to plan for our style, it's kind of like putting clothes on our book. If we plan for these different elements of style, it allows our piece to cohesively have a mood, images, and meaning. And as we know, with the oddball characters and multifarious topics that we want to have, making sure that all of these different offshoots, branches, ideas have meaning is something that will keep your reader coming back episode after episode. Now, there are many different ways that you can approach style. Four of the most common ones, which you may already identify yourself as, are informal, formal, journalistic, or archaic. And what you want to make sure that you're doing is, well, let me make myself a little bit bigger here. What you want to make sure that you're doing is that you are identifying what is my style when you're in the planning phase. And then you want to make sure that you're sticking to it for every single episode. If you start out with an archaic form, like Lord of the Rings or a high fantasy novel, oh, thou art a dwindling fool. You can tell I don't write high fantasy, can't you? Thou art a dwindling fool. And then in the next episode, she says, you are such a dork. It's a little bit jarring. Your reader doesn't really know what to expect. And unless you're doing something super experimental, you don't want to jar your reader in that particular way. So make sure that you're planning to have a style that remains constant throughout your entire story. And remember, styles can change from story to story depending on your genre. But just make sure one story, one style, unless you have a really, really good reason not to do that. Now let's talk about the length of episodes and why you should plan for these. So we're quickly going to talk about royalties. Now you know that the first 3 episodes of each one of your stories is available for free on Kindle Vella. Every episode after that must be unlocked using tokens. You see the little orange key? That's the symbol for token. Now, Kindle Vella readers can buy tokens in different bulk packs, and whatever of those tokens that they spend on you, you get 50% of that income as a royalty. Now, roughly, readers are going to spend 1 token per 100 words. That's right. The amount of tokens that your episode costs depends on how long it is. So you want to make sure that you are consistent with the length of your episodes so that suddenly for your reader to read even more, they don't have to invest more than they're accustomed to. So you want to plan ahead for what the word count, the rough word count of each one of your episodes is so that your readers can start to have an expectation of this is what they're going to invest in your story. And remember, authors are going to get 50% of that. And finally, let's talk about planning the pacing of major reveals, conflicts, and resolutions. So when we're talking about major reveals, conflicts, resolutions, different things that are happening over the length of the story, your plot arc, your story arc, your story architecture. There's a number of different ways that you can do this for both fiction and nonfiction. You're probably looking at many of those and already familiar with them. If you were a part of the Book Creators Program, then you're very familiar with the 7 Basic Plots by Christopher Booker, which you see there in the middle, as well as the hero's journey. Also, a really interesting study of story architecture is The Shapes of Stories by Kurt Vonnegut. Just go and Google it if you're not already familiar. There's some really beautiful infographics that are available that can give you some idea of how you might plan the architecture of your story in advance. This is something that not only can make your story feel more cohesive, allow you to publish on a schedule because you kind of know what's going to happen because you have a basic understanding of the architecture. But it also gives you the opportunity to make sure that you are not meandering or rambling with your story. You have certain plot points to hit. You know what they're moving up to, and you are sure that you are not going to lead your readers astray and that they are very well advised to invest their tokens in your story. Okay, so again, what to plan, what to pants. We're going to work on pantsing, character development, and story details, settings, and scenarios. Let me tell you a little bit more about this. For character development, we've already talked about our oddball characters. Now, your oddball characters can be major characters like your protagonist, your antagonist, or if you're writing nonfiction, it might be the person that you're focusing on for a particular section or for the entire book, or some of your minor characters. And here's our little oddball face there as well, because I love him. For character development, if you want to, you have the opportunity to utilize some audience engagement features to pants this a little bit. As you gauge your audience feedback using author's notes and polls, we're going to talk about polls a little bit more in just a moment. As you're utilizing both of those and practicing what feels good, you can figure out, hey, maybe I can allow for a little leeway, a little creativity when it comes to what my character might do next. Do I think that my audience, based on reactions from polls, perhaps I'm also engaging with them on social media and any of my other networks, perhaps my audience is really rooting for this one particular character, or they would like A, B, or C to happen. Which way do I go? I don't know. Engage your audience. If you feel comfortable with it and you think that your book will allow for this type of engagement and creative freedom, then go for it. Allow them to make some choices and just feel more open as to where your character might go, what relationships they might form, or if you want to stay very strict in a particular plot, you might be able to play with how your character reacts or feels to certain situations to allow for there to be a little bit of fun and engagement with your reader, which is one of the very, very powerful benefits of using Kindle Vella and writing serial fiction. So if you have the opportunity to incorporate it, absolutely do it. When it comes to nonfiction specifically, if you can't ask your reader, what would you like this character to do next? Because it's factual. It's already happened. You know what your character is going to do next, whoever the person is or story that you're about to focus on. What you might be able to ask them is more of, what do you want to know about more? You might be able to take the story in a number of different directions to tell it in a certain way, in a certain order. Which order should they go? Should we go in door A or should we go in door B? You can try and interact and allow for your reader to have some freedom, and for you too, to have a little bit of freedom with how the story is going to play out by using that reader engagement opportunity. All right, so what to pants, story details, settings, scenarios, etc. Beep, beep, beep. Time to use the polling feature. You know that I love any kind of crazy little piece of technology. So it's time to use the polling feature. And this is a really great opportunity that's different than your author's note. Your author's note gives you the time to tell your readers a little bit about what your story is about, any particular influences you had, if you have any remarks that you want to make, or if you'd like to talk about yourself as the author in that process, that's great. You can also give them a little hint of what's coming in the next episode. But a poll is a different thing. Polls are something that you're able to put at the end of each one of your episodes. They have a time limit, so they're only permitted to be up for a certain amount of time, and you cannot change them once you get them started. All right, so once the poll's up there, that's it. That's the question you're asking, and these are the answers that you're going to receive. And Kindle Vella is really, it's got a nice functionality to it. It's not just like a yes and no question. You can type your question and then many different answers that people can choose from, so you can get a little more nuanced with it. So when you're talking about trying to pants some of your story elements, let's use the polling feature. To use the polling feature in this way, you've got your major and minor oddball characters. I wonder where they're going to go next. Is there a setting that you could allow your audience to vote on, that your readers could decide which way are they going to go, A, B, or C? Maybe they have a dialogue or a conversation. Maybe they collaborate with someone. Maybe they make a new relationship or a friend along the way. There are so many different options that you could choose depending on what your readers' feedback might be. And it kind of keeps you on your toes. And I don't know about you, but it gets me really excited for writing to think, what are they going to be interested in? Where might they want me to go? And when it comes to nonfiction, specifically, you can think about it as kind of a choose your own adventure opportunity. Just like when we're talking about with character development and pantsing that for nonfiction, when you're thinking about different settings and different choices that your audience can make, perhaps poll them about which section. You can use the poll feature to talk about which section would you like them to go to next. Do you want to move forward or backward in time? Do you want to know the outcome of the cliffhanger that you gave them in that last episode? Or do you want to hop over to B's story about another person who is involved in this particular pursuit? You can tantalize them in any way you want to let them kind of steer the boat a little bit. And if you're not talking about a specific person in your nonfiction episode or in your nonfiction book in general, you could ask them about any topics that you're interested in you covering in future episodes. That's a way for you to allow yourself to have some creative freedom and also really involve your readers. Now, I'm sure that we could generate a really cool brainstorm of many different other ways that we can engage both fiction and nonfiction in some really fun pantsing. And for all of you folks there who are involved with book creators or the manuscripts community, when we have our special office hours directly after this session at 7 p.m., we'll do some of that brainstorming and think about it together. So final words are, Remember last session when we talked about setting up your first 3 installments like a TV pilot? And I talked about Issa Rae, and I said her quote from her masterclass is, "I'm glad I watched this, and I want to see what happens next." That's your goal when your reader is working through your story. At the end of the episode, you want them to say, "Hey," they're going to grab their phone, they're going to finish scrolling, they're going to answer your poll and read your author's note, and then say, "I'm glad I watched this. I want to see what happens next. I'm going to make sure to invest in the next episode. I'm going to click the follow button so that I can follow along on this journey. I'm invested. And hey, I'm going to see if the author has chosen what I voted the character or the person or the topic should be for the next episode." So let's look at next steps. And after this, I'll be taking questions. So if you've already got something on your mind, go ahead and pop it in the chat. I'll be answering those shortly. So the next steps are, you want to continue to write definitely your first 3 installments. You want to make sure that you're planning those small goals for each step. Remember, we want to sustain this with those small hits of dopamine. And you want to think about, am I a pantser? Am I a plotter? And how can I become a plantser? How can I invest the best things of both of those worlds and make serial fiction or serial nonfiction really work for me? I'm ready for some questions. Ask away. Let's see what you're wondering about for to outline or not outline. Don't try to start that argument with me about, "I am a plotter and I will never be a pantser." Hey, I get it. Terry asks, do readers automatically see the results of the poll in real time? Great question, Terry. They do see the results in the poll only after they've answered. And then you can see the results of the poll in your KDP dashboard. So they might have some idea of what's coming up next. Anything else you're wondering about? To outline, to not outline? While you're thinking about another question, if you have it, I'll share with you a little bit of my experience for writing my first episode and actually pressing the publish button. And that is that I really challenged myself to be more of a pantser. Yes, I definitely could have outlined this entire piece. Did I challenge myself not to? Absolutely. Did I include a poll at the end that helped my reader engage in my protagonist character development? I did. Did I let them have control of the whole plot? No, not yet. I'm not exactly sure how I feel about that, and I'm going to need to get a little more confidence. And so you might find yourself asking, those same questions. And it's okay to do whatever you feel comfortable with. Remember, you can have so many different Kindle Vella stories. You can write in many genres. You can experiment with all sorts of different styles and ways of storytelling. Because Kindle Vella allows you to use a pen name as well, you can explore all sorts of things that you've always wanted to give a try. And some of those projects might absolutely require that you have a very strict outline, and that's how you're going to move forward with it. And that's okay. That still works. You can engage your audience with your author's notes and through your audience building on social media and many different ways. But if you have the opportunity to use reader engagement, that's what I highly recommend. Did I see we had another question pop up there? Kyra asks, would you say that planting should be our strategy for all of the episodes or after the first 3? Okay, so let's think about this. I did end up asking a question for episode number 1. Do I think that You could also make sure that you had very strong first 3 episodes that were ready to go and planned and written down in advance. You kind of launch the beginning of the series, and then you start engaging your audience, the people who are investing tokens in you and who are following along in your story. Absolutely. I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong answer. You have to experiment and decide what your comfort level is. And honestly, no one can hold you hostage as an author to where you would like to take your story. If you don't get any responses on your poll for some reason, like you're still building your readership, then you just continue moving on with wherever your imagination uh, might take you. How long do readers have to vote on a poll? You can set that date yourself, Ty. So for me, because I want to publish every week, I gave my readers a time limit for, I think, 2 or 3 days before I wanted to be done writing so that I would have the opportunity to have the poll end, look at my draft, decide how I was going to incorporate their feedback if it fit and if it felt right. And then I would be able to still publish on time. So you have to think about your own writing schedule. So go back to week 2. Think about, when am I writing? When am I wanting to publish? When am I actually sitting down? And make sure that you end your poll in enough time for your readers to be able to actually incorporate your feedback while you're writing. Wouldn't you say that mysteries or thrillers need to be more structured in their setup because of the red herrings and clues? Absolutely, Cassandra. This is one of those opportunities where you want to use the strength of plotting. You want to use the strength of planning by at least planning your large story architecture, because you want to pace your major reveals. You want to make sure that you're pacing your conflicts and your resolutions as well. As we know, for a story to feel like it is moving along at a nice pace and for a reader to want to continue engaging, you can't have conflict, no resolution, nothing ever happens, there's no answers. And you also can't have easy, nothing is getting in this person's way. It's a constant back and forth of conflict, resolution, major reveal, big turning point, conflict, resolution, red herring, don't look this way, look that way, etc. So, because all of you are published authors already, you have the smarts to know what you can plot, what you can plan, what the strengths of your particular story architecture of your genre is, and then see where and how do I have an opportunity to engage my audience in this very unique way using the different Kindle Vella functions. If you use a pen name, will your profile be exposed through your Amazon author profile or will be completely anonymous? That's a good question. I believe that it does not, it connects directly to your personal Amazon KDP profile, but it's not going to show up on your Amazon author profile. Now, I will double check that because I am not exactly sure. I'm using my real name for my story. So I haven't gone through the steps of trying to use a pen name. But remember, you can start right now going into your KDP account, setting up and doing drafts of your Kindle Vella stories without publishing them. So you can access a number of different functionalities to see, how does this show up? How does that show up? And they have a number of different help guides and things that can also really give you a lot of information about those types of logistics. And I'll take one final question. Should the first episodes be written like an introduction? Welby, no, I don't think so. The introduction of a book, I'll be honest with you, sometimes I skip them. I absolutely do. You got to be able to sell me on your introduction if you're going to put it in there. I think that the importance of your first 3 episodes cannot be talked about enough. You can't waste any time. You need to go in there with all that you have to offer in order to invite a reader in to invest their tokens in the rest of your journey. So, last week we talked all about the different ways that you can really make a strong first 3 episodes. And so I recommend that you go in there right away, you show them what you've got, you give them great cliffhangers, conflicts, and really cool oddball characters. And sell it, hook them, and then move forward. Really great questions, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us again. Everyone else who's part of the book creators and manuscripts community, come join me in our live office hours to talk about this a little bit more. Have a great rest of your evening and happy writing. Make sure if you're publishing on Kindle Vella that you're tagging your story with the tag book creators so that we can find you and support you. Thanks, everybody.